So if you turn in your folders, I'm going to walk you through some papers, some pages very quickly, and just point out some things. What we're going to do is we're going to address the Obama at Notre Dame thing. Okay? You're probably sick of it already. But I just want to go through these few papers that I was able to collect and look at the different words being used, the different judgments being made, the different opinions being expressed, the diversity of the whole thing. All right? And it's going to give us a chance to look at how we think, how we feel, and how we act, as you said, Mary Frances. And we're also going to be able to look at light posts and the light. And then we're going to be able to look at dialogue, love, growth, and process. Okay? So keep all these things in mind. When we come to the reflection questions afterwards, that's what we're going to hope to do. But if you're in here, the first one I'm looking at over here is the Los Angeles Times. Okay? Quoting our own Cardinal DiNardo, who said, I find the invitation very disappointing. And though I can understand the desire by the university to have the prestige of a commencement address by the President of the United States, the fundamental moral issue of the inestimable worth of the human person from conception to natural death is a principle that soaks up all of our lives as Catholics and all our efforts at formation, especially education, at Catholic places of higher education or higher learning. The President has made clear by word and deed that he will promote abortion. Next page. Bishop Amen from Austin reproached. So the paper report. Now look at the word that they use. Reproached. Okay? And the quote is, I, along with many other Catholics, express great disappointment and sadness that the Catholic University should honor someone who is pro-choice and who holds many values contrary to the Catholic faith. In the midst of such sad situations, as Catholics, we must continue to be pro-life. Okay? Next. These were Obama commencement talking points for University Notre Dame trustees. These are the people who have to protect the Catholic dimension of the university, right? Okay, it starts. It's a rare thing to be at a commencement address from one of the most influential figures of the world. Second, the President will help inspire our graduates to be active citizens. Active citizens. And third, I was impressed that Father Jenkins invited him. He's facing some tough criticism. Fourth, shouldn't be any confusion about the honorary degree. We're honoring him as the sitting President of the United States and for his historic election, for fighting poverty, expanding health care, improving schools. So what's in a symbol? That's what we say. What's in a symbol? Then it says, the President has elevated them, and we honor that. What are the issues? He's elevated the issues, and we honor that. The next, the bishop's document, Catholics in Political Life. The university took this document into full consideration. So that's how they're interpreting it, okay? We believe it allows non-Catholics to be invited to give their views of important issues. In other words, that only applies to Catholics and not people who are not Catholics when they come if they disagree with us on some of our teaching. Okay? Next. We have said from the start that this invitation does not mean we agree with all positions the President has taken. And then we can never change the President's views unless he listens to us. And how can we expect him to listen to us if we don't listen to him? Okay? Go with all these little principles coming up here. I mean, this is getting more and more exciting. And President Obama won't be doing all the talking. Mary Ann Glendon will. Well, let's see what Mary Ann Glendon does. Next page. And I could not help but be dismayed, down to the third paragraph, by the news that Notre Dame also planned to award the President an honorary degree. This, as you must know, was in disregard of the U.S. Bishops' expressed request of 2004 that Catholic institutions should not honor those who act in defiance of our fundamental moral principles. So she's interpreting that in a larger context, not restricted to Catholics, but all people who come to the university if they disagree with a moral teaching, should not be invited. Next. And she quotes these two things that we read on the previous page. And then she says, a commencement, however, is supposed to be a joyous day for the graduates and their families, and it's not the right place, nor is a brief acceptance speech the right vehicle for engaging with the very serious problems raised by Notre Dame's decision to honor a prominent and uncompromising opponent of the Church's position on issues involving fundamental principles of justice. So it's with great sadness that I've concluded I cannot come. Next, Bishop Chaput, second paragraph. Notre Dame didn't need to do this to show its openness to dialogue. And candidly, very few Notre Dame faculty members would accept from their students this kind of creative reasoning now being used to defend the invitation. He has his own position there, right? And then it lists these 53 bishops who opposed it. Next, Kathleen Parker from the New York Times. She says that the president should bow out from Our Lady, okay? His abortion stance is in direct conflict with Catholic teaching, and no place symbolizes Catholics in America quite the way Notre Dame does. Offering this backdrop and extending the school's imprimatur to Obama constitutes a wink and a nod to abortion. Why not throw a pig roast in Mecca? Now there's one for you. That was Glendon's point. By her symbolic gesture of self-denial, she demonstrated that faith is an act, not a motto. And then it goes to the actual president's speech, President Jenkins' speech. Down below on the first page, next to the last paragraph, as a Catholic university, we are part of the Church, members of the mystical body of Christ, animated by our faith in the gospel. Yet we are also, most of us, citizens of the United States. We're getting faithful citizens here now, all right? This extraordinary evolving expression of human freedom. Evolving expression of human freedom. We are called to serve each community of which we are a part. And this call is captured in the motto over the door of the east nave of the Basilica. God, country, and Notre Dame. As we serve the Church, we can persuade believers by appeals both to faith and reason. As we serve our country, we will be motivated by faith. But we cannot appeal only to faith. We must also engage in a dialogue that appeals to reason that all can accept. Next page. Fourth paragraph. Genuine faith does not inhibit the use of reason. It purifies it of pride and distorting self-interest. As it does so, Pope Benedict has said, human reason is emboldened to pursue its noble purpose of serving mankind, giving expression to our deepest common aspirations, and extending public debate. So now they're quoting the Pope here, all right? Benedict. Skip a paragraph. It is out of this duty to serve the common good, all right? You're going to know what is good, true, and adult, and mature. Remember Paul? Okay? It's out of this duty to serve the common good that we seek to foster dialogue with all people of goodwill, regardless of faith, background, or perspective. Next paragraph. Of course, dialogue is never instantaneous. It doesn't begin and end in an afternoon. It is an ongoing process made possible by many acts of courtesy and gestures of respect, by listening carefully and speaking honestly. And then next to the, down at the bottom, others might have avoided this venue for that reason, but President Obama is not someone who stops talking to those who differ with him. All right? And then he quotes the president over here on the next page in the middle. He is the leader who has great respect for the role of faith and religious institutions in public life. He has said, quote the president, secularists are wrong when they ask believers to leave their religion at the door before entering into the public square. Next page. Denver Catholic Register, Bishop Chaput. And he says, when asked how to pronounce his name, he says, it's like slap you. So it's Chaput. Let's remember that the debate over President Obama's appearance at Notre Dame was never about whether he is a good man or a bad man. We also have a duty to oppose him when he's wrong on fundamental issues like abortion, embryonic stem cells, or cell research, and similar matters. Notre Dame did not merely invite the president to speak at its commencement, it's also conferring an unnecessary and unearned honorary degree on a man committed to upholding one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in our nation's history, Roe versus Wade. And then, down at the bottom, next to the last paragraph, there was no excuse, none except intellectual vanity, for the university to persist in its course. Father Jenkins compounded a bad original decision with evasive and disingenuous explanations to subsequently justify it. The damage remains, and Notre Dame's critics are right. The most vital thing faithful Catholics, got it again, faithful Catholics can do now is to insist that institutions claiming to be Catholic actually live the faith and encourage and with courage and consistency. Then comes along the Osservatore Romano, the Pope's paper. Okay, we got the Pope's paper now. And what this article is basically saying is the Osservatore is going easy and soft on the president. Look. It's, this paper is at the service and the thinking of the Pope. Where? Right here. Down 4 things. Now we're going to go down. Okay? The Osservatore Romano. You don't have that one? Yes. Oh, okay. The Osservatore did not report the bishop's criticism in the run-up to the Notre Dame event. In its article on the president's speech, it noted the protests, but emphasized Obama's call for common ground, as well as his commitment to reducing the number of abortions and finding an acceptable conscience clause for medical personnel both opposed to abortion. That caused some discomfort among conservative Catholics, but Vian, that's the editor, defended the editorial in a review within the Italian daily Il Riformista. Vian said that the U.S. president's Notre Dame speech was respectful and left him convinced that Obama is not a pro-abortion president. Okay? This is the Osservatore Romano. It should be understood that the Osservatore shares the same position as the American bishops who considered abortion a disaster. It is always a necessary and divisive task, in fact, to promote a culture of life at every level. All right. Next page. George Weigel responds to the Osservatore Romano. Last paragraph and that first one up there. He observed that it would be, quote, helpful if the newspaper published by the Holy See did not display a sorry ignorance of recent American history, including the history of civil rights movement and a fideist's credulity about the magic of Barack Obama. Nevertheless, while conceding that some Vatican officials do betray a sympathy for Obama, Weigel observes that it is a mistake to think that the Osservatore speaks in this case for the Pope or the Vatican as a whole. So he's saying this Osservatore Romano does not speak for the Pope or the Vatican, so forget them, all right? And then over here, down below, the Italian, after it says Catholic culture, l'Osservatore è cieco. The Osservatore is blind. That's what that means, okay? And then finally, our own Archbishop Emeritus, Archbishop Fiorenza wrote one of the most masterful letters he's ever written. One of the most masterful, okay? I agree that President Obama gave, quote, a reasoned and courageous speech at the University of Notre Dame. As a staunch pro-life supporter, I welcome both the President's plea for civil dialogue and mutual respect and courtesy between opposing camps on abortion, and his call to reduce the number of abortions through making adoption more available and providing support for women who carry their child to term. I believe the President is sincere in his desire that abortions be greatly reduced and even rare. Then he says, now, what's the challenge for the pro-life movement? They must hold the President to his word. We want his support for the Pregnant Women Support Act. We also believe the President should support reasonable parental consent legislation. Those are just some of the ways in which the President's desire for fewer abortions can be achieved. Now is the time to walk to the talk. If pro-choice lobby shares the President's call for respectful dialogue, and I assume they do, and for abortions to be rare and safe, they would not oppose legislation to reduce the number of abortions. Now that's a masterpiece. And finally, Cardinal George, who at the beginning was very, very critical of Notre Dame and inviting the President, made a statement after the speech in which he says, he expressed his gratitude for the President's statement that we should all honor the conscience of those who disagree with abortion and his support for conscience clauses advancing this goal. Okay? So, and finally, there's one more over here, but I don't think I need to go into that one. We've seen enough. Okay, I took most of your time for discussing, but I thought I would put it all out there and let you go at it. Now Maureen is going to take over here and facilitate this part. What I'd like to do now is to get some reactions from your tables, and then I'm going to read you this at the conclusion of that, and then we're going to do one other little exercise, and we may go a little bit over, and I know you're dying to eat, but we'll get it there, get it for you there. Okay? So who would like to tell me some of the things that were going on in your table? Everybody took a deep breath. Everybody took a deep breath and said, okay, we got Mary Frances. She's going to start it off.
The first thing that happened at our table is we started discussing the abortion issue.
Oh. Okay, all right.
So then we had to pull it back to what the questions were asking us to look at. And some of us, what I said for myself is my initial reaction was, what were they thinking? And then to look at the signposts of that, how do you resolve the conflict between thinking that they need to uphold what the teaching of the church is and that signpost of dialogue? So we dialogued about that a lot at this table.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else?
One of the things at this table that we touched upon a bit had to do with the invitation to the President to make this commencement address and giving him a platform from which to speak. And with the bishop's statement coming ahead of that, because I believe it did, was that really justifiable for them to go ahead and extend that invitation to him, to give him that platform from which to speak, particularly when that platform is a platform representing a particular stance, a particular Christian point of view, theology.
Okay. Actually, when we were studying theology in the seminary, every once in a while we would use Latin phrases. And we'd come to a theological point, and the professor would say, auctores scinduntur. And that means that even the theologians are fighting over the interpretation of something. And we were always happy when the theologians fought over something. Now, where we see a discrepancy in interpretation is precisely of the bishop's statement, because Bishop Chaput, Archbishop Chaput, is saying that invitation shouldn't be extended to anybody who disagrees with Catholic belief. Archbishop Fiorenza is saying it only applies to Catholics who disagree with the Church's stance. So where do you go with that? Okay, I'm just throwing more fuel in the fire. Okay.
My first reaction was I felt betrayed, and for various reasons, especially because of the honorary degree, much more than the standing invitation of every president that's sitting in the office to give the commencement speech. But what Jean was talking about truth was that in dialogue, there is an assumption, or at least a hope, that there's going to be a pursuit of truth on both sides. And what I said was that in my research for the truth of the abortion issue, I went to every pro-abortion, pro-choice source I could, looking for why they say and believe what they say and believe, and could not find anything. Instead, what I found was what seemed to me to be a kind of deliberate evasion of the truth. And that made, for me anyway, a very difficult dialogue, because I don't trust the other side. And to me, President Obama, in his campaign, saying that signing the FOCA would be his first act, made me not trust him, especially when he says what he says in the commencement speech. I don't trust him because he seems to have bought into the whole pro-choice, in my mind, cover-up by the vocabulary they use, by their deliberate actions to keep the truth from the women who are pursuing an abortion. There just seems to be such a pervasive avoidance of truth that I don't trust any of it. That's what I said.
Thank you. What did you hear in this? What did you hear in what he said?
That he went to listen to all the voices
Yeah.
of the other positions.
I find that admirable. That you would go and you would do that research and truly listen and try to look at their voices and so forth and try to understand. But I found that very admirable. I never did that, but it would be something that I should do. And I trust you. Pardon me?
Has anybody read FOCA?
No.
You should.
Yeah, I should read it. Can you tell us something about FOCA?
There's a lot of misunderstanding about what that bill says, and the interpretation of it is, I can't find any justification of some of the interpretations I've heard of that.
Okay. Well, that would be interesting. That's another beginning point, to go and actually look at the legislation and see what it says.
Something that you don't know anything about.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I'm talking about the bill, I'm not talking about abortion.
Yeah, I understand. Yes?
I find it interesting that it was a kind of informed distrust. It wasn't just distrust, I don't trust the man, but rather sometimes we risk, where we are trying to find the truth, to surrender the truth. I don't think that's what we're saying here. I think it's a matter of, as you seek the truth, to hold on to the things that are in fact true, but to grow. And I guess in both of these instances, there is a question of informed steps towards the truth that I think is fascinating.
Good. Yes?
Yes, informed steps toward decision-making, and the idea of making sonograms available to women who are considering abortion would help them learn the truth of their situation and what they were carrying. But that is not something that is supported by our administration. Also, parental consent bills are not supported by the current administration. Parents should have input in their young girls' decisions, just like having ears pierced. Age 12, you can't get ears pierced without a parental consent form. None is needed for abortion.
And that's why I thought Archbishop Fiorenza's letter was so beautiful. So beautiful. Because he says what has happened at Notre Dame means that we have to hold the president's feet to the fire and also hold pro-life people and pro-choice people to the fire for the issues as they see them, and make sure that this dialogue is going to go on. I mean, I saw Archbishop Fiorenza and I said, this is one of the most masterful letters that you've ever written. And he writes beautiful letters. He's an amazing writer. Anybody else before we move on? Yes.
I don't think the abortion issue is going to last as it is right now because of the morning after pill. I think the young women will take a pill and the baby will be gone and that'll be it. Everything's going to change, I think, in that pill.
We need to baptize the culture.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
and
do.
that's scary.
You do. You do. You do.
It's not going to be so visible. You won't have the same
Yeah.
arguments.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Oh, well, we just talked, Bill mentioned here, tempest in a teapot. And I just thought, well, my family is great for getting embroiled in these conflicts, conflicting thinking and whatnot. So, but a lot of, I was amazed that it lasted as long as it did, and that there were many people entering into the dialogue, and that just the subject was being brought up. It's like with anything, you know, even something that's negative, at least it's, or it seems to be negative, it's out there, it's being talked about. And I can't tell you the number of times I've said to my family when we get into conflict, this is not all bad, just hang in there. We can come to some kind of compromise or whatever, but it's the hanging in there, it's the pain of the conflict that people don't want to stay with it. And I think that it was good just that it was being talked about as much, and that you were getting to know people and how they think. And you've heard me talk about my situation. I told the table about that friend that disagreed with me about abortion and adoption, and I have an adopted child, and how I almost lost a friendship. But I had to know that she loved me and I loved her. And I think that's what you were talking about today. We can't enter into dialogue unless we love the person. It's hard to love somebody who's saying they believe in abortion and you have an adopted child in your arms. And but yet the foundation had been laid in the relationship of love. And I could not imagine how she could be saying that. So I had to go inside, I had to go to prayer, I had to go to another trusted person and say, how could that be? How could that be? And learn that she was coming from ignorance of what a baby is, you know, at what point does it have life or whatever, had thinking about that, but that she was trying to be what she thought compassionate about the woman who might go through the pain of childbirth, carrying the child, placing it for adoption or whatever. She wasn't seeing the other side. So I was able to do this process of dialogue and come to a place where we could at least understand where the other one was coming from and still have the relationship, love the person, but not necessarily love her, support her thinking on it.
Yes. Thank you, Cynthia.
I got thinking about is one of the things, the benefits that came out of that whole thing was the fact that we are having more dialogue.
It's true.
As a society. So whether you agree with him going there or not going there, the fact that he did has opened up opportunities for dialogue that didn't exist before.
Do I have those 2 pages there with yellow on them? I took them up here. Oh, here they are. You know, we heard a lot of bishops speaking, but I don't know whether they were speaking to each other on the issue too. I'm going to conclude this portion, and then we're going to do this little exercise over here with Maureen. But I got this because the Vatican Congregation of Education Secretary, who is Archbishop Jean-Louis Bruget, said something today and or some other day, and he said there are two currents in the Western Church, one seeking integration and one causing controversy. Okay. Now he goes on. His address was entitled Formation for the Priesthood Between Secularism and the Ecclesial Model. No, notice he's trying to put how society is working and what we're going to do for priests who are forming to serve this society. All right? Now, this is big stuff. All right. He explained the first, that is the people who seek integration. The first observes that there are Christian values in secularization, such as equality, liberty, solidarity, and responsibility, and considers that it should be possible to collaborate with this current and find areas of cooperation. The second current invites keeping distance. It considers that the differences or conflicts, above all in the realm of ethics, will be ever more marked and proposes an alternative model to the dominant model. Okay. The French prelate suggested that the first current was predominant, that's the integrating people, in the post-conciliar era, and has provided the ideological mold for the interpretations that were promoted at the end of the 60s and the following decade. I get nervous with ideological mold. He's putting on those of us who grew up in that period, all right? Things turned around beginning in the 80s, particularly, though not exclusively, under the influence of John Paul II, he added. The 65-year-old Archbishop commented that Catholics of the first current, the integrating ones, tend to be older, but still hold key posts in the church, while the alternative model has been considerably strengthened, but is still not dominant. This explains the current tensions in many churches on our continent. These differences take shape in various contexts, such as universities and Catholic schools, and seminaries and centers for religious, or, for example, are distributed today according to this dividing line. So he says, look, and you're going to see this dividing line. Others of a more recent inspiration highlight the confession of their faith and the active participation in evangelization. Now, this is the second one. The ones are causing controversy. The Archbishop proposed that the majority of the Western Church has endured a strong auto-secularization, that we have allowed the church to become secularized. And to respond to this negative division, the Vatican official encouraged an authentic interpretation of the Second Vatican Council, which perhaps will mean, he says, moving from one ecclesial model to the other. You get where he's coming down on this? Okay. He affirmed that a generalized lack of culture caused by secularization makes a year or more of initial formation focused on culture and catechetics something that is to be indispensable. What do you think he's saying here? I know it's a lot to take in, you're hearing me. Basically what he's saying, you know, those people after the Second Vatican Council got it wrong. And the ones that coming along in the 80s are beginning to get it right. And now we have to give an authentic interpretation of the Second Vatican Council. But where I think he misses the boat is it should be both and. It should be both and. We should be seeking integration with principles that are present in our culture. And you only do that through dialogue. And at the same time, we have to stand on on aspects of our faith from which we cannot be budged. It really comes down to a question of identity, doesn't it? Who are you, and what is the truth that you speak and you seek together in the dialogue? Okay, Maureen.
So we looked at this whole abortion, pro-life, pro-choice controversy, and our purpose was really to show what the process of dialogue looks like, where it breaks down, how we polarize. But we want to come back to, where are these creative points? Where is the Spirit groaning in the need for better and better dialogue? And we're yet to get into what that dialogue can look like practically, but just when you think about it off the top of your head, what are some of the other places in culture, in church, and in parish where there is a need for dialogue, need for a creative engagement?
I'm not sure I understand the distinction between church and parish.
Well, it is, certainly they overflow, and probably all three overflow, but we were thinking about, just for those of you especially working in parish, are there some things that are even more particular to the everyday workings of parish that are more particular than even the church at large? They don't have to be separate, they can cross over.
I
Ian?
would say the concept of lay ministry.
Lay ministry.
Church and for parish life.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean? Where are the doors? Where are the windows? What are the opportunities? What are the limits? The whole.
What, why are we here?
Mm-hmm. Why are we
Lots
here?
of us are lay ministers.
Right.
Well,
Robin.
I think that in families, when families that have a lot of nieces and nephews and great second cousins once removed and great grandnieces and nephews, and all of the family members are trying to get along with one another. The oldest members of the family, let's say they're primarily Catholic and they attend church regularly, and then as the younger nieces and nephews, the creative dialogue goes on with the older family members in their church and their personal relationship with the church and God. And the younger members of the family are doing their thing. And then as their understanding of the ideals to go by and the things to believe in according to the Catholic Church, they don't necessarily catch on to those things the same way that other parts of the family. So then there's a lot of misunderstanding that kind of grows gradually, and then all of a sudden, when they come together, they cross paths for like a holiday or something. Then suddenly there's a crash where the younger members don't understand why do you believe that? Because we never heard about that. We never heard of this. We were never told that we're supposed to follow these dialogues. What people go to church for. And so that the creative dialogue that we're learning about right now and what people learn about in church, they don't get it. And then it ruins a family. It can ruin a whole family. Because
Sure.
then the younger nieces and nephews no longer, they just give up. We're not going to talk to you anymore. And the whole family just starts to, well, we don't understand what you're talking about. We never were told to believe in these things according to the archdiocese and the whole Catholic
viewpoint. Well, would this capture what you're saying? And we had it up there and we just limited it here. But you're saying in families, we really need to have a lot of dialogue between generations and the generational differences, and how those generational differences are influenced by what we've heard in the church and what we've experienced, and that we need to have a lot of that just in our own homes and extended family groups. That's a good point. Okay.
I think it applies in a way under American culture. I would have, the knowledge of medical advances
Mm-hmm.
Be able to look, address those and understand those a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we need more dialogue related to what medical advances techniques are telling us.
Mm-hmm. Right. And surely you know we mean that these aren't separate. We're just saying what are some of the priorities. Mm-hmm.
Cultural diversity within the parish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of parishes are going into this fight and fight and fight. And they keep going up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cultural diversity. Mary Frances?
Tying it to what Robin was just saying about family, perhaps under American culture, what is the definition of family?
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of, I mean, this whole thing with Obama and Notre Dame, we could start pulling out articles from all voices across the board in terms of the definition of family, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
In American culture, I think we need more dialogue on immigration, the whole process of immigration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was the one on my mind too, Virginia. Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that in order to transform society, I would say that there's a need for more creative dialogue as to what is the role of, what is the purpose of parish life, dialogue between pastor and laity, as to what does it mean to be community. I think this goes back to the whole issue of lay ministry, but it seems that there is an old kind of mentality. You're the pastor, you're the lay. But we can transform society that way.
Mm-hmm. So they're connected, but what do we mean particularly by?
Why are we in a community to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
Where do the two engage?
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Dominica, I kept overlooking you.
This kind of crosses church and, well, I think all three, but the focus of running parishes as businesses. I mean, this is one that's been big
Mm-hmm.
on that, where does the business part and the spirituality come into it?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good one. Okay. The parish as a business versus, you said spirituality, but a religious community or a faith community, huh?
Faith community.
Mm-hmm. I'll put that. Sure, we could say not only the parish, but the diocese as business versus parish, faith community.
I recently met a man from Pakistan, and he was just burning to speak to the issues between Israel and Pakistan. And I think a big problem in our politically correct society and our polite society is that we don't enter into dialogue honestly. We don't speak truthfully. We don't speak the truth. We try to be politically correct. We try not to offend anybody. Well, let's don't talk about religion. Let's don't talk about politics. Last fall I saw a tremendous amount of, let's don't talk about politics at dinner or at, athletic event. Let's don't talk about that because
Let's just enjoy our meal.
So I don't know how you say that. It's just, it seems to me in the society that I'm in, that people don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to enter into dialogue at all.
Mm-hmm.
They want to shout about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we can't conduct dialogue in a respectful way.
Mm-hmm. I'm probably like a lot of the overlap, but it goes back to really why we're having this particular seminar is to talk about the need to put more value on dialogue as a way of living life and faith, huh? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, to say we're going to dialogue presumes a lot of preparation. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth.
I want to dovetail on what she said. We need to look at what technology is doing to dialogue, proliferation. The little packet that we've had, because you can go to the internet and get all of these different voices. In teaching this year, it was shocking for me to find out kids don't understand the difference between a blog and a valid site.
Mhm.
And anybody
Mhm.
can say anything that they want to.
Mhm.
And it's out there instantaneously, you can't contain it. And so we're diminishing our ability to even recognize the truth, or distinguish fact versus opinion, and being overwhelmed. And I think a lot of the reason people say, let's don't talk politics, is because we are constantly overwhelmed and bombarded by this information, and we can't filter all of that. So,
Yeah.
you put a technology bubble around the whole thing and say, how is technology distorting our understanding of that?
And you said before, and relationship.
Right.
And tomorrow, Father Nesti is going to break his presentation into two parts. And one is to look at certain aspects of American culture, and then how does the Catholic voice influence? And that you'll see kind of some of this coming together in process too. Jeff?
I think across the board, one of the ongoing dialogues has to be between those who hold to traditional views and those who, I guess you call them progressive, or those who want change, and to dialogue about what is legitimate foundational principles that need to be protected and what are legitimate concerns that need to be addressed for change.
Help me say that. Okay.
Traditionalists and progressives, I don't know.
What about, what are the real core values or the core teachings of the church? I mean, when we, those of us who do this kind of stuff, we see people who will die on the hill of a novena. You know? And I mean, and I say that with all respect, but, you know.
Well, like in American culture, one of the things has to do with the Constitution. You know, how much of the Constitution is sacred to who we are, and how much of it is up for grabs. Same thing true with our church doctrine and our church moral teaching. How much of it is unchangeable, and how much of it can grow and change. You know, just that ongoing dialogue instead of a shouting match.
Yeah, that's the word that was coming to my mind. Let's go put them there. Okay.
I think if we need to have a dialogue between family generations, I think we have to have that in parish life as well, because sometimes the elderly are disconnected to the youth. How do you do that? We've had a challenge of families moving on and not participating in a certain ministry anymore because their children have grown and have moved on and they have different interests. So you lose the great witness that the elderly could have because they cannot teach anymore, they don't have the energy, or they don't want to because they're not related to anybody, and so they loses that. So who are their models in the parish life that they could look up to?
So like within the family, the parish has to continue to find ways to talk to the different age groups and cultures within a parish.
And still be connected despite the
Right. Right, and we're just reminding ourselves, because there's a kind of a felt sense of that out there from your experience, the need for more dialogue, how to set up opportunities and readiness for dialogue.
One of the things that I've been, really looking at and just I'm going like, what is going on? Is the news media. I'm talking specifically about the one, which television news program do you watch and what slant are you going to get? And then the accusations that go from one to the other about they're not telling the truth or they're just blatantly lying, and, and the whole thing of how media is used to promote a, even greed. I'm just thinking specifically kind of, the general electric thing that's going on now, and how, to me, it's just like, whether you listen to CNN or Fox or NBC or MSNBC or whatever, you really, after a while, wonder, where is the truth in anything, And sometimes I just have to pull back from it all and just go to BBC or something, or go to the Russian sorry?
What passes for news is really opinion.
Exactly,
Decipher through
exactly. And you
that.
wonder where the motivation is. A lot of, the slant, or what is being, what's the motive behind
Right.
what is being reported and how it's being reported.
Right, yeah.
I think we need to separate the news from the opinions. And
Well,
most of-
exactly.
most
And how
of
do you do
the-
that?
Most of the cable network programs are not news, they're opinions.
So is the network, though.
Well, the networks are more straightforward.
Wow.
That's a
And, a lot of them are just more aware of it now.
So in a way, I think you do have more options of finding out with the internet and with the other, I mean, you can go and listen to the news from China if you want to, but I mean,
Right.
I was thinking of that during, the war and everything, where you couldn't get a good overall look at what was really happening unless you went to sources outside the United States. So
Right.
I think we're just more aware of it now. It may have been
Right.
happening from the beginning of time, but with all these other sources now, you become aware of, everybody's always had an opinion,
Right.
And maybe we were getting more opinions than news, I don't know.
Well, just following up, Adam, I'll let you have the last word here.
Part of American culture here is the whole understanding, need to dialogue as to what is freedom of speech. What is it when we say, well, I'm American, I can say whatever I want. Well, there's a whole issue of where's the fact, where's the opinion. You've got the mic, where do you cross the line, where do you not, where are you presenting the news, where are you presenting your opinion. I think the whole concept of freedom, in particular freedom of speech in this case, we're talking about dialogue, I think is a big one in American culture.
Okay, I agree. I'm sorry, I already gave Adam the last word.
I was waiting for one word.
Okay, one word.
Peripherally, and I say this as someone who is a member of armed resistance and someone who wore a uniform for 10 years and look after people who do that. With the two wars, we are seen by the outside world, and we are indeed the strongest military power. We certainly use our power and have for the past certainly 100 years. We engaged in one so-called civil, a very uncivil war that killed more people in America than other conflicts. So we are in fact an extraordinary warlike nation. It's a country that I love, that I came to, but we are a warlike nation. It strikes me odd that Catholics who actually have a just war doctrine, thought that worked out by Augustine Aquinas, and that doctrine has been actually quite distorted in various ways recently to justify killing on a massive scale, killing of innocents on a massive scale. And I say somebody who's not a pacifist, but unless we actually address war, the just war, the ability and the need for resistance, and at the same time, the great need to restrain ourselves and our enormous killing power. And that's where I think that we're going to be a seamless garment of life. And I think that since he died, the seamless garment of life seems to have been shredded. And there are now not only left-wing cafeteria Catholics, there are right-wing cafeteria Catholics. And that's okay. Cafeteria is not a bad thing. I prefer cafeteria to fixed menu. But let us then take our trays and put it down. It's okay.
Yeah.
And talk to each other over our different foods that we may pick. Otherwise, we will be victims to a crusader mentality, which is one of the disasters for the church, our crusader mentality. I speak as descendant of crusaders.
Yeah. Well, I put your piece up here under just to capture your word, the war, but also we could have a long debate about what is necessary for national security. What do you think of that as an American? What do you think about that as a Catholic American? How did all that inform you? But as I look around the room, I'm sure you need a break and you're tired, but you ever get the sense listening to all this, oh boy, oh boy. And I always think, I'm ending, I always think of what Father Bin says when he comes over from Taiwan or having been born in Vietnam. He always says, aren't you all lucky that you get to talk about this? Aren't you all lucky that you get in there and this and that? And sometimes I think, oh, I wish we weren't like this. I wish it was just clear. But that would be, as you said, it's all set for us. And so this is these are our creative moments. I think Father Nesti's whole message for me again this morning is this is the place we're called to be missionaries and to participate in these dialogues.